Chapter 4. Unconditional Love for Others. As a master of self, when I look into the eyes of another individual, I see another authentic self, a beautiful expression of the divine. No matter where this person is in the process of awakening, I respect that his or her intent is just as powerful as mine, and doing so is an act of unconditional love. If I were to try to control this person, I would be lost in the fog and place conditions on my love and acceptances of him or her. If you see the world through the eyes of conditional love, you are, by definition, attempting to control others, imposing your will so that they conform to that definition of who and what you think they should be. If they don't agree to your demands, they will receive the punishment and your judgment. This is conditional love in a nutshell. But remember, every time you judge somebody, you are punishing that person for not following agreements they never made. As you look back over your life, you could see that many of the relationships battles you thought were for your own personal freedom were battles of who was going to domesticate who. And every time you experienced a moment of anger, outrage, indignation, or any other negative emotion as a result of someone else's behavior, you created a dream of villains and victims, and you were once again caught in the drama of the party. Perceiving yourself as a victim and another as a villain doesn't allow you to see the person who is actually standing before you. You don't see their story, their past, their heartbreaks, and how all that has impacted their life and contributed to forming the person you're talking to. All you could see through the fog of domestication is that the person you have cast as the villain in your story isn't living up to the values you think they should. But when you see another with the eyes of unconditional love, you are then able to clearly see who is actually in front of you. A living being who is trying to survive and thrive in a world filled with domestications and conditional love. Unconditional love allows you to disagree with their choices and beliefs of others while still respecting their right to have them. Practicing unconditional love is the art of mastery of self. Once you have recognized, released, and forgiven the self-judgments that have arisen from your own domestications, you can then recognize and forgive others when they act from their domestications. The person in front of you has been domesticated, and now they want to pass it on to you because it's all they know. However, they can only subjugate you with your permission. For many people, family can present a unique challenge to see through the eyes of unconditional love, because it is here that the roots of domestication are deepest. However, often it is the wounds that you have with your family that hurt the most. But the reason they hurt so much is because you love them. The deep love is also what will help you forgive and heal. Next to your family, your most influential domesticators growing up were probably your friends and classmates. These are people you want to impress or be like. You often tried to adjust your behavior according to what they found acceptable, and of course, you likely asked them for the same. This doesn't mean that there was also a genuine love present for these friends, but because you all come from homes rooted in domestication, it's all you knew, and because you brought these practices into your relationships. There comes a point in life where you wake up from the dream and begin to choose friends who accept us, encourage us to grow, and support us, and we were willing to do the same for them. But if we don't continue to recognize where and how domestication has affected us and work to spot and release when it arises, the same patterns will develop with our new friendships. We will ultimately place conditions on them to fit in our new model, however enlightened we think it to be. For instance, I will sometimes hear comments in Toltec circles like, "That person isn't a good Toltec," or "She isn't impeccable with her word." In these cases, you could hear how the tools of enlightenment have been turned into sources of judgment, control, and domestication. In all our relationships, but especially our relationships with friends and family, where the roots of domestication run the deepest, our job is to be aware of our potential and get hooked back into the dream of the party, to be blinded by the fog And the key to avoiding this is to continually remind ourselves to act from a place of unconditional love. This is easier said than done, especially when the roots of domestication run deep. But there is a way. Creating peace in the dream of the planet. When you find yourself in a disagreement with someone and you can feel you're getting upset, you have the decision as to what you do or say next. Before you speak or take another action, ask yourself, is what I'm about to say or do coming from a place of conditional or unconditional love? In other words, is your love and acceptance for the person in front of you somehow contingent upon them agreeing with you or doing what you wish? If so, that is your cue that your domestication and attachments are controlling you, and now you are trying to domesticate somebody else to your point of view. If your response is from unconditional love, by definition, your response shows the other person respect, even if you ultimately disagree with their views and actions. Mutual respect is the key that allows true peace to occur in the dream of the planet. This respect also allows everyone to experience the benefit and consequences of their own choices and actions. When conditional love dominates the dream of the planet, any semblance of peace and harmony occurs through force. When one person or persons subjugate the will of others, governments are famous for this type of behavior. And history is littered with examples of one group controlling another group through the belief that might makes right. But this also occurs in the personal relationships. When one person uses a position of power to control the behavior of another, this, of course, is not real peace and harmony, and it never lasts. People will always rebel against subjugation and fight to reclaim their free will. Because our very nature itself is freedom and will always strive for it. But when our vision is clouded by the fog, the problem is that if a group of people fights for freedom without clearing their own fog first, that is, their domestications and attachments, these same people who gain freedom from an oppressor will eventually replace the previous set with conditions of their own, and in turn try to subjugate the people around them in order to establish their version of peace and harmony. This cycle of imposition and subjugation has been occurring in the dream of the planet for thousands of years. This is how wars begin, end, and start again. This is true no matter if it is a brawl on the street or an international conflict, as both stem from one party's desire to subjugate the other based on the subjugator's belief that their way is right. This is the cycle that conditional love always produces. Peace and harmony from the point of view of unconditional love are the engagements of equals, using knowledge and awareness to co-create a dream whose diversity reflects the free will of each individual living in this moment. Much like the party where you are the only sober person, you cannot expect everyone to want to be sober or even to wake up, nor can you make anyone do so. Attempting to wake someone up against their will is attempting to subjugate them to your ideas. So how do we engage from a place of unconditional love? How do we sincerely try to help others awaken without subjugating them? Take a moment to reflect and discern what your true motivations are. Is not always easy, especially when you are in the heat of the moment and the drama of the party is trying to hook you back into believing the dream is real. Furthermore, coming from a place of unconditional love rather than conditional love may still involve doing or saying something that the other person doesn't like, but speaking your truth from a place of love and respect is the mastery of self in action. It's at times like these that I remember something my father taught me. I am responsible for what I say, but I am not responsible for what you hear. I am responsible from the tips of my fingers. I'm responsible to the tips of my fingers and no further. And how someone reacts to what I say or do is out of my control. Of course, the truth is not meant to be a license to say or do something that is unkind or intentionally hurtful. To be considerate of others is also a choice we have. But we understand that when we break the chains of our domestication, This news can be hard for our domesticators and those trying to domesticate us to handle, especially at first. What really matters is our intention. When it comes from a place of unconditional love, we can have the confidence that whatever action we take is the right one, and the outcome of any situation is beyond our control. We do the best we can, and we release our attachments to the outcome. This can be difficult to do at first, even a little scary. But committing to the act from a place of unconditional love eases this anxiety, as we know that our actions and our actions But committing to this act from a place of unconditional love eases this anxiety, as we know that our actions and our actions after that are coming from a place that is true to our being. Overcoming resentment and forgiving others. When you look back and review the beliefs, ideas, and conditions that you have tried to live up to, you often realize that their origins reside in the domestications you experienced in the past. This can be a very troubling realization for some of you, depending on the level of subjugation you experienced growing up. If those with power inflicted their will on you via force or manipulation, and especially if the subjugation was harsh or even extreme, it can be very difficult and almost impossible in some cases to see them through the eyes of unconditional love, even for those of you who didn't have a particularly traumatic experience with domestication. There are very few people who don't have some anger or bitterness over incidents that occurred during their formative years. Resentments that stem from past domestications are some of the biggest stumbling blocks to seeing others through the eyes of unconditional love. The word resentment in French, in origin, it literally means to feel again. One of the primary benefits of doing this work is that you no longer allow any conditioning or experiences from the past to control you in the present. By definition, you are holding on to resentment. Then you are enslaved to the past. Something that has occurred, is already done, is actively causing you suffering now, and you feel it again and again. This is what resentment is: self-inflicted suffering with the emotional poison we wish for another. Anger, resentment, and grudges are all tools that the parasite uses to strengthen itself and take control of your mind. And here again its methods are very sneaky, because while the parasite may accurately point out how you were mistreated at the hands of another, the solution it offers is to stir up negative emotions of anger, sadness, bitterness, etc., and encourage you to do your best and encourage you to, at best, withhold your love from those who hurt you, and at worst, to strike back at them with revenge. The parasite always reaches for the tools of conditional love, and no ultimate good ever comes from employing them. Instead, you are lost in the fog again, and your dream is tied to a story of victims and villains. Unconditional love and forgiveness of your domesticators is the way out. This could be some of the most difficult work for you to do, so be gentle with yourself as you embark on this road, especially if you've suffered greatly at the hands of others. In addition to forgiving those who harm you, you also need to forgive yourself. That's because many people, when they look deeply at past experiences of domestication, find that they are angry with themselves for either staying in a situation or not doing more to break free. If this applies to you, remember to forgive yourself for that too. You were doing the best you could at the time. There is no need to beat yourself up. Respecting yourself also means being honest with yourself. If you are not ready to forgive, that is your truth. Don't subjugate yourself with, I have to. If you're not ready, you're not ready. And that acceptance of yourself with the truth is practicing unconditional love. After all, it is about breaking the cycle of domestication. Take your time. If it is your preference to become ready to heal, forgiving is the final step of healing a wound. Performing a forgiveness ritual could help you clear out old emotions that are keeping you trapped on the surface, that are keeping you trapped in the suffering of the past. We will do just that in an exercise in the following. And many of the world's beautiful spiritual traditions provide wonderful prayers and other practices for doing so. In the Toltec tradition, we also advocate another step to see beyond the stories of villains and victims and into the healing power of forgiveness. The key to doing this is the heart of my father's third agreement. Don't take things personally. When you practice this agreement, it is all implications. You realize that nothing anyone does is because of you. It's never personal, even if someone intends it to be. So, as you're simply standing, it's never personal, even if someone intends it to be so. As you are just simply standing in the target zone. Seeing the truth of this allows you to better let go of the past and embrace the truth in the moment. Your domesticators were only doing the best they could, given their level of consciousness at the time. When you reflect on this agreement deeply, forgiveness comes much easier because you realize that the actions of others were about them and their suffering, their attachments, their domestications, and you. I'm going to repeat this. When you reflect on the agreement deeply, forgiveness comes much easier because you realize that the actions of others were about them and their suffering, their attachments, and their domestications. And you see that they were lost in the fog, drunk at the party, and as a result, they didn't have their faculties to act in any other way. Respect them and allow them to experience the consequences of their actions. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. It is the way that life teaches us. Seen in this light, we could better grasp the meaning of Jesus' statement, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Luke 23:34. If you have clouded your personal dream with resentment, the first step to changing this is to become aware of it. Once you see what is really happening, the next step to moving past it is forgiveness. Doing so allows you to tap into the power of unconditional love for others. The next exercise will help you go deeper into this process. Forgiveness ritual. On a sheet of paper, make a list of everyone you feel has mistreated you in the past that you have not yet forgiven. This list could include members of your family, friends, coworkers, acquaintances, and beyond. Review the list of names and think briefly about the incidents involved. Next, read the following statement out loud. I, insert name, am ready to forgive all those who have inflicted pain and suffering on me in the past. I choose to forgive them so that their actions of the past could no longer affect my present. I wish to see them through the eyes of unconditional love. I also forgive myself for anything and everything related to these events. I was doing my best at the time, and I pray that these people and myself could experience only love and peace going forward. Just as you did in the preceding chapter's exercise, when you forgave yourself, I want you to take a piece of paper, crumble it up, and throw it away. As you do so, visualize all the negative feelings that you have for these people and the events going in the trash as well. This simple ritual is the beginning of replacing resentment with unconditional love for those who have caused you suffering. That being said, when the pain inflicted by others is extreme, an act of forgiveness is rarely a one-time event. As a result, you will likely need to repeat the aforementioned statement every time the events from your past replay in your mind, and you will feel them again, and the parasite is attempting to lead you down the road of negativity and conditional love. If there is someone on that list you are having a special trouble forgiving, say the prayer below every night before you go to bed, inserting the name of the person or persons you'd like to forgive. I pray that so-and-so receives everything that you want in life, including the experience of unconditional love, peace, and happiness. Some of you likely bristled as you read that, as the prospect of praying that these people receive everything you want is perhaps the opposite of what you think you want for them. I understand this sentiment, but I would encourage you to give this prayer a chance and repeat it every night for 2 weeks, even if the words don't feel sincere. Many people who have done this exercise consistently for 2 weeks have been amazed by the changes that occur inside of them. Remember, forgiving others is something you're doing for yourself, not for them. Forgiveness does not mean that you forget the events of the past, nor that you condone any actions. Rather, it frees you from being controlled by them by remembering that you are the only one responsible for the tips of your fingers. The final exercise in this section will help you continue on the path of forgiveness. Forgiveness Dialogue, Part 1. The exercise consists of 2 written parts. Each is about a paragraph in length. To begin, I want you to look back over your life and identify an event or situation where you experienced significant suffering at the hands of another. Think of a time when someone either tried to or did domesticate you by forcing their will onto you in a harsh or extreme way. This should be a major event that created a shift in your personal dream. That change, the way you viewed others, likely exposing their flaws, and ended up becoming a defining moment in your personal story. Many people have experienced something like this, but most likely during their formative years, but it could also be something that occurred as an adult. Write down the details of the event as you are going to tell someone who had no previous knowledge of it. Take your time and replay the details in your mind, going back to the moment so you could remember what happened and how you felt. And here is the important part. Write from your perspective at that time, not from where you are now. Be raw in the moment. Let your feelings flow, and do not edit yourself with knowledge of what is right and wrong, or try to be forgiving. Remember, this exercise is for you. Unless you choose to share it with someone else, you'll be the only person who ever sees it. Here's an example from a dear friend of mine. One night, when I was 9 years old, I was at home watching TV when I heard my parents start to argue in the other room. I'd heard them fight before, but tonight seemed different. My mom came in and told me to go to my room and close the door, which was not unusual. I did as I was told and sat quietly and fearfully in my room, listening through the thin walls as their shouts grew louder and louder. Then I heard something I'll never forget. A blood-curdling scream from my mother, followed by an eerie silence. I felt frozen in panic, wanting to leave the room, but afraid of what I might find if I did. I opened the door and went down the hall to the family room. My father was sitting alone on the couch, and when he saw me, "Your mother ran out of the house. Go see if you could find her." I remember being scared of him and angry with him at the same time, but my main concern was my mother. I went outside to look for her. It was dark and I was afraid. I looked into the darkness and called out to her, but she didn't respond. Then I noticed our neighbor's porch light was on. I walked over towards the porch, and I could hear voices and my mother sobbing. I asked her what had happened, but in my heart I already knew. "Your father hit me," she said. "He beats me." I was overcome with a combination of rage and sadness, and I swore to protect my mother if he ever tries to do that again. "If he ever does that again, I'll kill him," I said. That evening was life-changing for me. As for the first time in my life, the dark side of my father was in full view. He took his own life 6 months later. In my friend's case, his father was attempting to domesticate his mother, and in conjunction my friend, through the use of force. Your example might not be as extreme, or it could be more so. To get the most out of this exercise, I encourage you to not read any further until you have written down the example in your own life. Once you have, come back and continue with the exercise. The reasoning behind pausing in between these exercises is because it's a lot more potent when you don't know the outcome. And I think that this is like a little bit of a spoiler alert, so if you would like to participate in this exercise, pause it now and return to it after you have wrote that down. So, part 2. The next part involves your imagination. I want you to imagine that you're meeting the person who hurt you in their spiritual form only. In this meeting, you could talk directly to the other person's authentic self, the part of them that is awake. not lost in the fog or drunk at the party. In this form, they are imbued with unconditional love, and you could say whatever you want to them without fear. Tell them how you really feel about them in that situation. Then imagine what the person would say to you from the perspective of their authentic self. Write that dialogue out between the two of you. Here is my friend's example. Dad, I'm so angry and saddened by what happened. I can't believe you hit your wife like that. You scared me so bad. We are best friends and I looked up to you so much. I can't understand how you would do that. What is the matter with you? Why, when you drink, you're such a different person. I feel guilty that I wasn't there to try to stop you. When you died a few months later, I was sad, but also a little relieved, because I knew I wouldn't have to worry about your violence anymore. I couldn't help but feel guilty for feeling relieved for your death, too. His reply, Son, I'm so sorry for hurting your mother and you. I completely lost control of myself, and I didn't know what I was doing. When I drink, I am not myself. Please know that I want only the best for you and your mother. I love you both dearly, and if I could take back that moment, I would. I'm so very sorry, and I ask for your forgiveness. You have absolutely nothing to feel guilty about. I am responsible for that entire situation, so I want you to let all that go right now. Please know that from where I am now, I have only love for you and your mother, and I am doing my best to help you from afar. This exercise allows you to get in touch with your feelings at the time, express them, and listen to the response from the other person, spoken from the perspective of his or her authentic self. The result for most people is that they are better able to see and understand that their actions of the other persons weren't personal, and that at the heart of every individual is unconditional love. Remember to be gentle with yourself as you explore and release these past events that have caused you pain. This can be difficult, but the truth is that the tougher it is, the more you stand to gain. The freedom you'll experience will profoundly affect your life going forward, and it's very difficult to progress on your path without going through the most important steps of forgiveness. Take it slow and return to these exercises when you need to, going a little deeper each time. That concludes chapter 4. The next one is chapter 5, spotting the triggers and maneuvering the traps. Stick around.